I have finally played my first ever Resident Evil game, and that is Resident Evil 2. I have been getting into the horror genre lately, and it was about that time I played the most popular horror franchise in gaming, as they have released an unhealthy amount of games in this series and have been nominated for countless Game of the Year awards. This is a series that has been around for decades now, and I am finally playing the second entry in the series, which is a remake to the original that was released in 1998. And this remake coming out just over 20 years later. And what a job they did with it. They modernized it perfectly in what companies should really strive for when remaking games. There are a lot of aspects I love about this title, but a few elements that don't do much for me. I will be getting into all of that in today's video and my overall experience and reactions playing my first ever Resident Evil. But before we get into things, if you guys do enjoy this video, it would mean a lot if you could like, comment, and subscribe as we are trying to get to 5,000 subscribers. With that being said, let's jump right into the video. Now, Capcom have released a good few remakes within the Resident Evil franchise, but Resident Evil 2 is right up there with 4 being regarded as the best remake out of the bunch. And it's obvious to see why. With improved graphics across the board, keeping the core of the game the same, and maintaining the similar energy, they hit all the notes necessary for this remake. Like just simply comparing it graphically, it is an absolute work of art with how they are able to completely modernize it and have it be to the standards of modern gaming. And the atmosphere and environment is the first aspect that I want to touch on in this video, as I feel like it's arguably the most important aspect within horror games. They need to create this unease and tension within the world that you're exploring. And I think this title creates that tension well. We are in this place called Raccoon City. The main areas that we go through in this game are the police station, the parking garage, the sewers, and lastly the laboratory. I really enjoy each one of these locations and feel like they are distinct from one another. Each new area feels completely different from the last and has some differing enemies to keep the experience fresh. I think they do a fairly good job with the horror aspect of this game, even though out of the horror titles I've played, is probably the worst in terms of that. For reference, I've played Dead Space, Silent Hill 2, and Soma. I don't think it's miles off, but I do think the other games I've played handle that aspect better. I still think they do a great job, and there were a multitude of scenarios where I was fearing for my life. There were times when I was low on ammo and heals and far from save point just wanting to save my progress. And some of the enemies were just straight up terrifying, especially the lickers who could crawl on the wall and floor. They were so creepy and moved way too fast. Oh no, this is from hell. This is from hell. And I think the best feature in this game is Mr. X. This thing was genuinely horrifying. Oh my god. What is that? What is that? Jesus Christ. Oh! Every time I would see it, I would be running for my life and was so scared. They did a brilliant job with the design, the implementation of him was handled so well. I felt like I was being watched and pursued the entire time in the police station, which added great tension and unease as I explored. Whenever he appeared, it always felt like the worst time, especially when he could just open doors. Oh my gosh, when that happened for the first time, I was actually fearing for my life. He doesn't know I'm here, right? Oh my god, what am I doing? Stay away, please, please. I think he might be the scariest enemy I've experienced in a horror game before. But besides that, I think the sound design and lighting is a strong point here. Especially the sound design. From enemy footsteps, the sound of zombies, doors opening, lights flickering, the sound itself carried a lot of tension. I also enjoyed the puzzles, and they were satisfying to solve, even though there really wasn't much thought to each puzzle. Unlike Silent Hill 2 where you had to think to solve these objectives, in Resident Evil 2 it was just merely following the path and completing them. But that's not a complaint. I enjoyed solving the puzzles and some of them required some thought, like the mini games with the wires and the solution in the laboratory. Okay, I kinda take back what I said. I do think the puzzles are fantastic. I don't think there's any hold-handing whatsoever. I really did have a fun time solving them and exploring each location to the fullest to complete these puzzles. They really did handle it well and it never felt like any singular objective dragged. Because one thing that annoys me about horror games is the gameplay loop. Sometimes of, oh, go fix this, and oh, now this issue. Oh, one more thing. Okay, now we can move on. It's just rinse and repeat of that. But that was never an issue here in this game, and everything flowed together smoothly and never let the exploration drag. Now, the last point I want to bring up is the differences between Leon and Claire's experience for exploring in differing settings. Now, the main contrast between their two playthroughs boil down to some small extra locations and places to access. So, some places in the police station we couldn't get to with Leon, we were able to see with Claire, and she also had the orphanage to explore, even though that was very short. Overall, I think they do a solid job with the atmosphere. I felt tension throughout the whole game, and they brought in good progression with the puzzles and had some terrifying enemies. But with that being said, let's jump right into the next section of this video, which is the gameplay. Now, the gameplay here is crucial and one of the most important parts of a survival horror game. In my opinion, the most integral aspect is to create this scarceness in materials and make you feel as if you are scavenging for every last piece of ammo and heals. And Resident Evil 2 does a fantastic job of creating that desperation to find those things. Every single shot matters. You have to utilize your heals at good moments. You really feel as if you're trying to survive in these horrifying locations. And it's so much fun. I think it is integral to feel kinda weak in these sorts of games. I don't want to feel like I could just walk up to any enemy and just easily wipe them out. Not like this game is difficult or anything, but I can't just shoot my way through it. I have to be wary of my ammo consumption, the noise I make, and make sure I don't take damage. You have to consider all those things. I also really enjoyed the crafting aspect, upgrading your guns, and inventory management. I think all of these played into the survival concept, especially the crafting and managing your inventory. Crafting made picking everything up useful as you basically needed these materials to craft more ammo or get some heals. So every item had a use, but you had to make sure you didn't pick up too much stuff because of limited inventory space. So you had to put things in the chest at safe points or just toss things out in the moment. I like that management of deciding what items you needed at the moment and playing your routes out depending on what loot you had at the time. And the upgrading of the guns played into that inventory management, as when you upgrade them, they took up more space in your inventory. Speaking on the weapons though, I thought there was great variety. Not just from one character, but between both Leon and Claire, they both had different loadouts. For Leon, we had a handgun, shotgun, a magnum, and a flamethrower. For Claire, we had a different handgun, a grenade launcher, an SMG, a spark shot, along with 2 different kinds of handguns. So between both playthroughs, you'll be having a different gameplay experience, not just with the puzzles in some locations, but also with the weapons you have at your disposal. I enjoyed all the different guns we had, and it was fun using them all in different scenarios. Now lastly, I want to talk a bit more about the enemies and bosses. I think this is a strong point for Resident Evil 2. Maybe not as much the enemies besides the Licker and Mr. X, but I still found them to be fun to fight, and it was annoying in the moment, but it was cool having them randomly come back to life sometimes after taking them out. Or maybe that was just me being dumb and I wasn't aware that they were still alive. But it did make walking down the same corridors that bit scarier knowing that they still might be around. And the bosses were such a great time. I'm always a little hesitant with boss fights with this simple gameplay system because I don't think they bowl too well together, but that was not an issue here in Resident Evil 2 whatsoever. Especially when I went into the fight with like no ammo at all. I had to devise like these master plans with the 3 rounds I had left in my weapon, and I'm using every last resource imaginable in the fight. There were 2 instances like that for me, and they were my 2 favorite moments in the game. First, it was in my Leon run against G3 where I had no ammo and it was a battle to take him out. And then in my Claire run against G2 was actually one of my favorite gaming moments, honestly. It took me years to devise a proper plan to stun him enough times and time it properly to take him out with the scraps that I had left. This game was at its best when I was at my wit's end in terms of ammo and resources. I loved the desperateness and planning that came with it. Overall, the gameplay in Resident Evil 2 is very good. I liked the survival aspect with managing your gear, I liked all the weapons, and also the puzzles were engaging enough. And same can be said about the bosses. But now it is time to move into the last topic of this video, and that is the narrative. Now, for the narrative, at least for me, this is probably where I would say I had the least fun in the entire game. By no means is it bad, it's a solid narrative, but it's not where I think this game shines by any means. I think it succeeds in its survival mechanics and atmosphere, and not so much the story. But the premise of the story is that you have these two playable characters that you can play different runs with. That being Leon Kennedy, who is a rookie police officer, and Claire Redfield, who is a college student. They arrive in Raccoon City with Leon investigating the events and Claire trying to find her brother. The goal of the game is to uncover the secrets of this zombie apocalypse and find a way out. It is a very basic premise of, oh, zombie apocalypse and solving the cause, which ends up being fairly generic in of itself. I wasn't too invested in the narrative, the lore, and reasoning behind everything, but I did enjoy some aspects of it, and I think playing through more of the games will get me more invested in all of it. I found the dynamics of Leon and Ada to be solid-ish, and the same can be said about Claire and Sherry. I liked how both had their different plot points to make their runs feel a little bit more unique, as a lot of it does feel very similar, which was a struggle for me engaging with the B run that I did with Claire. It wasn't like hers was bad or anything, it was just very similar to Leon's. The main difference was the goal in their journey, as pure location wise we explore practically the same areas besides a few spots. For Leon's playthrough though, it focuses more on the discovery of what happened to the city and figuring out the cause of the outbreak. And for Claire, it is more about protecting Sherry, who is the young girl that we found, while learning about what happened. Leon's I found to be a little less engaging, I guess. I ended up caring more about what was happening in Claire's journey. As for Leon, we have Ada Wong, who is a supposed FBI agent investigating Umbrella and Annette Birkin. I think she was a very cool character, but I didn't care for her too much and the little thing that they had going on. Once we meet her though, we learn about the history of the virus, how it came to be, what happened to William Birkin, and how did he become that creature. We get a lot of good info, and I enjoy some of the lore here and there. Especially with how William Birkin turned against Umbrella and was going to sell the virus, and was then attacked and had to use the G-Virus to save himself. Don't think that turned out all too well for him though. I would like to say it was fun uncovering everything, but I could have predicted this before the game even started. It's just such a basic premise of an outbreak being caused by some virus by scientists. It didn't wow me with that. But I wasn't expecting some groundbreaking story, so I wasn't too annoyed by it. And I'm not trying to be overly critical of the narrative, as I don't think it was the focus here. But we work with Ada going through the game and even playing as her at some point, which I enjoyed. Same with the Sherry section in Claire's run. But after all the reveals of what Umbrella is responsible for, the outbreak, and letting the T-Virus get leaked, we eventually get betrayed by Ada. This betrayal really didn't feel like much, as we didn't really know her all that long. I enjoyed their dynamic, but wish we got more of it, and a connection for the betrayal to feel worse. But since we barely knew her, it didn't really feel like a betrayal. She was never a part of the FBI and was only there to steal the G-Virus for whoever she was working for. We have our big final fight against William Birkin's G3 form, and escape while having one final battle against Mr. X, where we blow him up with the help of Ada, who in the end saved us. And this is where we meet up with Claire and Sherry. This was like a weirdly abrupt ending, and you really do have to play through Claire's story to get a complete and satisfying conclusion to the game. Because going through Claire's run now is very similar at the start on all levels, but it changes once we meet Sherry. Sherry is actually what makes Claire's run so much more interesting. I found her section more engaging compared to Ada's with the terrible cop and the orphanage, and she just had a bigger role in the story, because she is connected to the G-Virus and all that happens with Umbrella. And she's also the daughter of Annette and William Birkin. She was infected with the G-Virus and we seek to get her a vaccine for it. So we go through all the similar events that Leon does, and we fight G3 and eventually get the cure for her. But after that is where we get a lot of fun added fights, with the battle against G4 and G5 being just epic final fights, and it ends off with you, Sherry, and Leon all escaping Raccoon City. Overall, the story is a fun one. I'm not sat here blown away by the intricacies and depth of it, but it was clearly never intended that way. This was an engaging and exciting game. The story is by no means bad, and I think they handled all their story beats well. Again, I don't actively have that many issues narratively, it just doesn't wow me, and that's okay. I think Resident Evil 2 is an unbelievable remake. It does everything that a remake should do, and just comparing the original to this is breathtaking. The game itself, at its core though, is still a very fun one, but I don't think it reaches the level of other horror games that I've played. But I had a great time, and I am so excited to play the other entries in the series. I have bought every single one, and I am pumped to get through all of them and eventually play the new one that is coming out next year. My final rating of Resident Evil 2 is a 7.9 out of 10. Please don't hate on me for that score. That still means I had a great time and think it is a very good game. There's a lot of aspects about this game that I think are fantastic, just nothing on some high level in my opinion. If you did make it to the end of today's video, thank you guys so much for watching. Your support means the absolute world to me. I had a lot of fun making this video today, so if you did enjoy it, it would mean a lot if you could like, comment, and subscribe, as we are trying to get to 5,000 subscribers. Again, thank you guys so much for the support. It means the absolute world to me. I'll see you in the next video, and God bless.